Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here, and it's time for another reaction request. If you have a video that you'd like me to react to, check the description below. There's a link that will take you to a Google document with all the relevant information. So today we're going to be looking at this video, Saragarhi The Last Stand, and this is from Extra History, which I don't think we've looked at before, at least as far as I can recall. Maybe we did. I know we've done a few history videos now, but unsure if any of them were Extra History. As for Saragarhi, which I don't know if I'm saying that correct, I'm not really sure I know what this is. Like, I think I've maybe heard the name before, but I could not tell you anything about this, so... and I'm kind of glad about that. Like, I want to learn something. Like, fill in my gaps. Let me know something from history that I don't know about. Because it's sure to be an interesting story. I mean, it's not going to be a long story. This is only less than 9 minutes long, so we're covering whatever this event is pretty quickly. But interested to hear it and see what this is all about. So let's just go ahead and get started. Here we go.
Afghanistan, graveyard of empires, where Alexander met his match, where the great Soviet would stumble. But right now, September of 1897, the British Empire takes its turn playing out their own tragedy.
A lot has definitely happened in Afghanistan.
Eventually, they too will leave enervated, sapped of strength by this unforgiving land. But not today.
Okay. Maybe we have looked at this jump. It seems kind of familiar.
In 1857, a great uprising had swept through India and nearly displaced the British forces there. Since then, the British continuously fought smaller rebellions to hold on to the jewel of their empire.
Yeah.
Today is September 12th, 1897. Dawn comes to the very boundary of empire. We stand in the uncontrolled borderland that would today be just on the Pakistani side of the Pakistan-Afghanistan divide. The British Empire has been trying to consolidate its hold on this wild, untamed region for some time. They've built a string of forts to help them project power into the mountains' tribeland. In this string of forts, there are two named Fort Gulliston and Fort Lockhart, and between these two forts stands a tiny, threadbare village called Saragarhi. It is this village that concerns us today. Because in that village, the British had established a signaling post so that Fort Gulliston and Fort Lockhart could communicate with each other. And
I'm thinking Black Vegas, right here in Atlanta.
Sorry for that.
I see Atlanta. That's black.
And they had manned that post with a handful of Sikhs. Dawn breaks. The men wash, go through their morning meditation, affix their turbans, and begin their day. Over the last 10 days, there have been probing attacks on the forts. There's a sense that something is brewing. Everybody is on high alert. The Sikhs man their posts and begin their morning tasks. The air is dry, thin in the mountain passes. The day is clear. Someone tells a joke to break the tension, and everybody laughs, but the feeling remains. One of the lookouts shouts, "There's a great mass moving on the horizon." All 21 men in this tiny post take up defensive stations. The signalman operates a tiny hand-cranked mirror that lets him send messages to the forts by making Morse code out of flashes of light. He signals Fort Lockhart to let them know the situation.
Well, that's kinda
Fort
cool.
Lockhart signals back that they count at
I guess
least
that's what you would do
14
at this time.
standards, at least 10,000 tribesmen, once allied with the British but now in full revolt. And they are descending on the fort, with only the little signaling post standing in their way. All around the signalmen, the rest of the unit is piling up ammunition and barring the gates of their tiny compound. The signalman sends a fateful message. "Can you send help?" There's a moment's delay, then a reply. No. They won't get there in time, and they can't leave the fort unguarded. The men in the signaling unit gather around their commander, Ishar Singh, knowing that they could still make a break for it. But Ishar calmly tells them what they are, in their hearts, already prepared for. They will stay, and they will fight. They will delay the oncoming tribesmen as long as possible. They will buy the forts the time they need to call in reinforcements. There is no disagreement, no mutiny or desertion. There is only a quiet acknowledgement as the men get back to work. The signalman returns to his mirror. Throughout the day, he will never stop relaying the events. The sound of the onrushing horde grows louder. Rifles crack. Then the horde is upon them, assaulting the outer wall. The disciplined fire of the Sikh troops break the first wave of rushing tribesmen, but they are like the sea, rolling back, reforming, and then rushing forward again with even greater strength. Bodies drop all along the killing field in front of the signal post, 20 rifles roaring against 10,000. But this time, it's not enough to break the charge. Shells pepper the rough-hewn walls. One of the signal company falls dead.
Yeah.
Then the enemy is at the wall, climbing, clambering up, determined. A brief melee, knives and swords and bayonets and rifle butts. They break the wave again, but this time there's Sikh blood in the dust, under the baking sun. The bodies of the fallen are carried back to the inner wall. Each loss is a friend, one of only 21 holding this station, and that number is dropping. Shouts are heard from outside the wall. The tribe's leaders are promising the Sikhs wealth, safety, positions of importance if they just abandon their post. No man budges. The sun falls low on the horizon, turned a smear of blood scarlet by the smoke. The attackers have set fire to the low brush that clings to the hills surrounding the fort. The Sikhs look out, trying to see the shapes of their foes through the thick gray smoke. Then the signalman shouts. The neighboring fort has flashed a dire warning. From their position on the hill, the fort spotted a handful of tribesmen coming out of the smoke on a blind approach to the side of the signaling station. They've breached the first wall. Ishar Singh barks orders, breaking off a handful of men to defend the breach. When shots sound from the flanking attack, the main force again rushes the main gates with their now diminished defenders. Soon, all combat deteriorates to a desperate melee with bayonet, knife, boot, and sword. Tribesman after tribesman falls to the Sikhs' cold steel.
They're doing a pretty good job
takes its toll. Inch by inch, the Sikhs are pushed back. Each soldier of the signal post sells his life dearly, slaying dozens for each defender that falls. But soon there are only a handful of the signal troop left. Ishar Singh orders his men to fall back, to retreat to the comparative safety of the inner wall and remount a defense. But they can't break and get through the gate without giving their attackers an opening to force their way through. Ishar knows this. He tells his men to go, and then bellows, charging the swarming tribesmen with sword and pistol in hand. For a few valiant seconds, he cuts down attacker after attacker, and then is overwhelmed. His blood stains the rock, but it is enough. His men have taken to the inner wall and formed a second defensive position. He knew, and they know, that the position is still hopeless, but it'll buy the forts more time, and cost their assailants more dearly. Fewer than a dozen men now stand to return fire. Every shot fired into the swirling mass before them is almost certainly fatal, but axes and clubs and rifle butts hammer against the thin wooden gate to the inner wall. It's not long before the gate comes crashing down. The signalman sends out one final message, requesting permission to take up his rifle. When the fort grants it, he packs his signal gear back up in its leather case and affixes his bayonet to his rifle. The men from the fort can only watch as the signalman moves to hold the door to his small signal shed. He is the last Sikh alive in the fort. For a moment they cheer as he fells one tribesman and then another, and then 18 more. Wow. The tribesmen pull back, and for a moment the troops are hopeful, but then they see the smoke. The assailants have lit the signal station on fire. Later, it will be reported that the signalman yelled the Sikh battle cry over and over as the fires burned. Bole so nihal, Sat Sri Akal, or shout aloud in ecstasy, true is the great timeless one. The signal post is taken, but the 21 Sikhs stand have bought their neighboring forts the time they needed. By the time the rebelling tribesmen attack, the forts have been reinforced, and they succeed in turning back the tide. When at last the British retake that little signaling post in that tiny mountain village of Saragarhi, they find that the 21-man signaling unit had left behind hundreds of enemy casualties. The Battle of Saragarhi is the only time in British military history where every single soldier involved in a military action was awarded the highest military honor available to them. You can argue how much impact their sacrifice had, of course. The British would lose all influence over Afghanistan in less than 25 years, and would lose control over India 1 month before the 50th anniversary of this battle. But this battle serves to remind us of all the groups that have sacrificed to make great nations great. The groups that we sometimes forget when we talk merely about the history of great powers and movements on the world stage. And that alone is something worth remembering, even 120 years later.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's a really cool story. Yeah. Disappointed I hadn't heard about that sooner. That's like a really cool, like, historical event. I mean, it's kind of a bit grim. I mean, they ultimately were all killed. But just any sort of story where you have, like, a force fighting against such a much greater force, like to the last man, just to defend this location. That's always really cool. Like whenever that happens throughout history. And yeah. And I don't know if I have too much else to say about it, but I think Extra History did a good job of telling the story. And I am so curious. How it sounds familiar. I swear yeah, okay, I did one about the Cold War from them. Okay, so yes, I have seen something from this channel before. So, cool. I do like their presentation style, and I think they told the story in a way, in the right way. I mean, some of these channels would maybe like punch it up with more humor, but I don't think this story really needs that, or that would just distract from it. This is just how you want this to be told, with respect and just awe for what they did that day. And yeah, definitely impressive stuff here. So a cool video for sure. Definitely enjoyed it. Hope you guys liked the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.